This is the Louie Tee Network.
In the lab room.
The views and opinions shared on this program are that of Louie Tee and In the Lab Room alone, and should be taken exactly as they are given. If you are soft, easily offended, or can't listen to the criticism of your team, this program is not intended for you. This is pure, unadulterated football talk for the hardcore fan. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome, you are in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. 2014 NFL Lab Reports, St. Louis Rams. You already know what this is. It's the 2014 NFL Lab Reports, St. Louis Rams. Strengths for the St. Louis Rams. This is a very intriguing bunch in 2014. I think St. Louis fans are probably the most excited they've been in a very long time, and rightfully so. After the 2014 draft that they had and acquiring 2 first-round picks and going out and getting a guy like LaMarcus Joyner that can help you right now, Trey Mason, there's a lot to be excited about. Adding that group of guys to the mix of an already talented football team, you look at the first strength, and one that is a glaring strength for this football team, one that just stands out, sticks out like a sore thumb, is this front seven. And adding a guy like Aaron Donald in the first round, never, ever trust a man with 2 first names. Adding a guy like Aaron Donald to the mix, I think solidifies this front four as one of the most dominant front fours in all of the National Football League. I guess there are other teams like the Carolina Panthers that might have something to say about that. I tell them to keep their comments to themselves, but this front four has and can boast 4 first-round selections across the entire defensive line. No other team in the league can do that. You look behind them at the linebacker position, and they're only getting better. We'll talk about the linebackers here in a second. But this front four has the potential to do something like what the Buffalo Bills did a season ago, and that's have 3 guys with over 10 sacks along that defensive line and have over 40 sacks for just your front four. That's unheard of in this league. Teams don't do that. You don't have 3 guys along your defensive line that go over double-digit sacks, and you don't have all 4 of your guys total over 40 sacks. It just doesn't happen. Only the elite of the elite do that. Bills had 57 sacks last year. That's elite. The Rams weren't that far behind, though, with 53. You add Aaron Donald to the mix, and all of a sudden, this could easily turn into a 57 or 60 sack football team. So they had 53 last season, did the St. Louis Rams. This front seven is a strength, and they boast some of the best players at their respective positions along this defensive line and linebacking core. And one of my favorite players in the entire National Football League is Robert Quinn. And so I just love watching this Rams football team. I love watching young teams evolve. And this Rams front seven, they can get it done with the best of them. And so you go from that front four to the linebackers behind them. It's one thing to have a front four that's dominant. It's another thing to have a linebacking core behind them that is just as young, hungry, and talented. And you look at that linebacking core, and I think it could actually get better with the addition of Ray Armstrong, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But you look at James Laurinaitis. To me, he's the rock of this football team. Not just the defense, not the linebacking core, not the front seven of this football team. He's a guy that no matter what the record is for the Rams, whatever the score is in the particular game that he's playing in, he gives it everything he's got. He's a tackling machine. He was Luke Kuechly before Luke Kuechly. Okay, nobody talks about James Laurinaitis because he plays on a losing football team. But here's a guy that's a tackling machine, or a sideline to sidelines, can play coverage, can pick the football off, can blitz, can do everything on the football field that you ask of a middle linebacker. In addition to lining everybody up, getting the calls in and making sure everybody's where they're supposed to be. He's the complete package at the middle linebacker position. And when this team starts to win, I think he'll get the proper recognition and the just due that he deserves. You look at another guy that has all the potential in the world, and this is what Jeff Fisher loves to do. He loves to go out and get guys that everyone else is a little afraid of, that they don't want to take a flyer on because of the headache that they might cause or because they could be a distraction. Go see Michael Sam. And Jeff Fisher doesn't shy away from that. And he took a flyer out on Alec Ogletree, a guy that is extremely talented out of Georgia, was a safety, converted to linebacker, got into the league as an outside linebacker. And you knew he was the quintessential will outside linebacker, can run with tight ends, can make plays on the football because of his safety background. But yet he can run, can pack a punch and hit you with a thump, run sideline to sideline, is faster than most safeties, some corners, and just about all linebackers in this league. The guy can run. He's a flat-out beast. And this kid has all the potential in the world in the makings of a Pro Bowl, all-pro type player if he can just keep his head screwed on straight and just play football. You saw a lot of that raw ability last year, pick six against the Texans. And this kid has a lot of potential. Sky's the limit, and he is one of those players that can change the game at the linebacker position for the St. Louis Rams. I think this unit is only going to get better, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but their front seven is legit, and that is definitely a strength for the St. Louis Rams. You move on to another strength, and it's youthfulness. Let's talk about the youthfulness of this team, because this St. Louis Rams team is one of the youngest football teams. Now, it's not just them being young, because anybody can be young, okay? Any team can be young. Being young doesn't do anything for you, okay? You can be young and dumb. But this is a young and talented football team. And that's the key. Not just being young, but being young and talented. This Rams football team, get this, as currently constructed with a 90-man roster, only 3 players are 30 years or older. And of those 3 players, only 2 have 10 years plus of NFL experience. Now, if that's not young, I don't know what is. This team is extremely young and talented, and they've got a lot of guys that are learning right before your very eyes how to play this game and how to win. And with a little bit of experience, but still being young, comes a hungry and dangerous football team. And I think the Rams are starting to get to that point where this youthfulness and this exuberance is starting to turn into know-how, and they're starting to learn the do's and the don'ts and the ways to avoid pitfalls in this league and how to turn some of these close and narrow defeats into wins. If they can figure out how to win football games, like that Seattle Seahawks game at home last year, if they can figure out how to win games like that and not throw those away, this is going to be a dangerous and scary football team. And that youthfulness is starting to turn into very seasoned knowledge. And if you can get guys that have played since their rookie season, you can get them into their 4th and 5th season, and that light bulb comes on, and they're still young. I mean, a lot of these guys are 26, 27, 28 years old, in the prime of their careers. And they've been playing since they were 22, 23, 24 years old. And all of a sudden now they get it, and they're still in the prime of their careers. That's when you've got a great thing going. And this is what the St. Louis Rams have right now, is a lot of young players that are starting to get it at positions, and they're turning into studs. And if they can get them all on the same page at the same time and stay relatively healthy, this could be a scary team. This youthfulness on this football team is dangerous because it's also packed with talent. You move on to another strength for this St. Louis Rams football team. Specialists. The Rams have among the best tandem of specialists in this league in punter Johnny Hekker, who was a Pro Bowl participant in 2013. And of course, young Jeezy, one of the biggest legged kickers in the National Football League. And I think the thing that is going to make him a better football player is that the St. Louis Rams figured out how to use this kid. Because in his rookie season, the Rams went crazy with young Jeezy. When they saw his leg and his ability to kick the football, all the coaches went so crazy. Yeah, they went crazy with young Jeezy. And they decided to send him out there for 61-yarders and 59-yarders. Sure, he can make those type of kicks. His leg is that big and explosive. However, there are drawbacks to sending your kicker out there for those type of kicks, and they figured that out in his rookie season. A couple of things happen. If he makes the kick, great. You know, everybody's excited. You put 3 points on the scoreboard. It's a huge deal. But what if he misses? There's a lot of things that could go wrong when a kicker misses. Not only are you giving up field position, especially if you're kicking 59 and 61-yarders, but the psyche of a kicker is one that is extremely fragile. Much like a shooter in the NBA or a golfer putting the ball, trying to get it into the cup. You don't want to see it miss. If you're a shooter, each shot that doesn't go in, it wears on you mentally. If you're a putter in golf, you're putting that ball, you want to see that ball go into the cup. You start missing some easy putts, and all of a sudden, psychologically, you're at a disadvantage. Same thing with kickers. That ball doesn't go through the upright. If enough of them don't, all of a sudden now, it drags into the next kick, and it lingers over. And now they're thinking about what they did wrong on the last kick, so they overcompensate for that, and then they miss again and again. And you can damage a really good field goal kicker that way. So what the Rams realize is that, yeah, it's nice to know that in our back pocket, we got a kicker that can go 57, 58, 59. But how about we scale it back a bit? You know, 55 is cool, 53, we know he can make those with ease. If we need it, it is there. You know, before halftime, you want to trot him out there for a 59-yarder, knock yourself out. You know, game on the line, you need a 57-yarder, you can send him out there. But in the middle of the second quarter, when it's not necessary, maybe you've got a little bit of rhythm going in the football game, defense is playing really good football, send your Pro Bowl punter out there to pin them inside the 5 instead of your potential Pro Bowl field goal kicker to try and boom it home from 57 yards away. So there is a unique distinction that the Rams have because they have one of the best specialist units in the league. And I think that their special teams can take it to another level with Tavon Austin. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But right now, their specialist is among the best in the National Football League. And then you look at another strength for this football team, and that's cookies. Yum, yum, eat them up. Yum, yum, eat them up. Cookies. Give me them cookies. That's what the Rams said last season. Give me them cookies. Anytime you stick your hand in the cookie jar and boop, the football comes out. Give me them cookies. And last year, there was not another team more efficient in reaching their hands in the cookie jar and coming out with the football than the St. Louis Rams. Forced a league-high 21 fumbles, recovered a league-high 15 fumbles, and had a league-high 3 touchdowns off those recovered fumbles. Now, if that isn't being greedy and not getting your hand caught in the cookie jar, then I don't know what is. Give me them cookies if the Rams can continue to be that proficient at stripping teams and getting that football out and recovering it. Because look, you can strip teams all you want. You could have led the league with 21 forced fumbles last year, but if you only recovered 7 of them, what good is it? Yeah, that's one half of that equation is getting the football out. You got to get it out first, but you also need to recover it. And I think a huge part of them forcing fumbles and recovering them is up front with that front 4 that I just talked about and that front 7 is getting to the quarterback. Robert Quinn is among the best in the league at getting to the quarterback and getting the football out. Even when he doesn't touch the quarterback, if he's close enough within striking distance, he'll reach out there, swat that football out of there, get it out, and next thing you know, you look up and one of those athletic defensive players for the St. Louis Rams has scooped that football up. He's looking to score. And that's how they got 3 defensive touchdowns last year on recoveries of fumbles. You're not paying attention. Ball comes out. Game has been changed like that. I mean, I remember that first game of the season last year against Arizona. When you needed it, Robert Quinn came up with a huge strip sack, forced fumble. You recover it, get down deep into Arizona Cardinals territory. You end up winning that football game. And so those are the type of plays that change ball games. And the Rams did it the best last year. And if you're going to continue to win and get over the hump, that's what you're looking to do this year, is to get over 500 and compete in this division. You're going to need this to continue. You're going to need guys like Robert Quinn, like Chris Long, like Michael Brockers, like Aaron Donald. Never trust a man with two first names. That entire first round front four unit to get it done. Get to the quarterback and get that football out. Force errant throws. You're going to need them to remain dominant. And getting those cookies is going to go a long way in helping you get to the next level in this league. You go from all of those strengths to the weaknesses of the St. Louis Rams. Moving on to weaknesses for this St. Louis Rams team. This team is one that can frustrate you at times with some of the mistakes that they make. And I think this is a hallmark of a Jeff Fisher team. And this has to stop. And this is one of those things where you like the toughness, you like the aggressiveness, but you also want smart football players. I was once told that dumb players don't last long in this league. And you can be as talented as you want, but if you don't have it here, it's going to show, and you're going to end up not remaining on the football team. And so we start with offensive penalties for the St. Louis Rams. And to me, this is a calling card of a Jeff Fisher team. You're going to have a lot of penalties because he coaches aggressiveness. But at the same time, you got to be smart with your aggressiveness. And the Rams were one of 6 teams in the league to amass 1,000 yards or more of offensive penalties in yardage. Can't have it. You can't be one of those teams that consistently shoots yourself in the foot. No Plaxico Burress going on here. You got to make sure that you're doing the right things and you're staying out of trouble. There's nothing worse. At least for me, I can't speak for you out there, but there's nothing worse than busting off a 47-yard run only to realize that there's some yellow laundry on the carpet and have them call holding and bring it back. And it was a very unnecessary play. There's nothing worse than picking up 9 yards on 3rd and 6 to extend a drive that looks like it has the potential to get into the end zone, only to find out that you had a legal motion or a legal shift, 2 guys moving at the same time. That's undisciplined football. Avoidable penalties that cost your football team. That's the difference between you extending a drive and getting a touchdown or you having to punt the football. And it's unnecessary and you got to stop. Rams were 2nd in the league in offensive penalties in terms of the amount. Can't happen. Got to clean that up. If you're going to take the next step, you cannot have self-inflicted wounds. You have to be smarter as a football team, more disciplined, and you cannot help the opposing team out. Look, you're not good enough to help the other team out. They don't need your help. You're not friends. They're not on your team. Don't help the opposition with penalties. You move on to another weakness of this football team. It's health. And we could talk about health being an issue for all 32 teams because that's one of the first things that runs off your tongue as a fan is I hope my team stays healthy. You hope the NFL football gods bless you with a relatively healthy season. Some teams are blessed, others are not. You just got to hope it's your turn to be blessed, to have that anointed oil placed on your forehead and that you are safe and immune to all of the injuries that go around the National Football League on a yearly basis. If you're the Rams, you can't afford to be injured. You're a banged up football team and you stay banged up. You start at the top with Sam Bradford. This is a guy that gets injured way too often. In 4 years of football, he's missed half of 2 seasons. He's played all 16 in the other 2, but he's missed time. And for a guy that you want him to prove himself, he can't miss any more time. He has to be on the field for this football team. Kenny Britt, a guy that you're relying on very heavily right now. We'll talk a little bit about Kenny Britt a little bit later on, but just know that this kid has all the talent in the world, but he has to remain healthy. We'll talk about Kenny Britt in a little bit, but he's another guy that will get injured on you. He has to stay healthy. What about Scott Wells, your center? Here's a guy that has come over from Green Bay and when healthy, produces fine for you. But the problem is he's been injured and he just fractured his fibula. He's out right now, and so you're looking to replace him, and we'll talk about that situation a little bit later, but he's a guy that gets injured. What about Jake Long, your prized free agent fish from a season ago at left tackle? He's on the shelf right now. Ripped his leg up and had a catastrophic injury towards the end of the season. You need him back. So you're dealing with a lot of guys that will get injured, and you need to stay relatively healthy if you are the St. Louis Rams. You've got a slew of injuries at a number of positions with guys who seem to get hurt often, and that has to stop. You got to find a way to remain healthy if you are the St. Louis Rams. You look at another weakness of this football team, and I call this grounded air, lack of explosiveness from this St. Louis Rams offense through the air, okay? It's funny because after drafting Tavon Austin, I thought this number would be a lot higher. But again, you got to understand that, and I think I'm starting to get this, that you can't rely on rookies that often in this league. You know, we get so excited about the draft class and their potential, but you really don't see that potential maximized until 3-4 years down the road. Usually right when that rookie contract is up is when you start to see guys performing at a very high level, and you're starting to see what they can become in this league. But right out of the gate, it's rare to see a rookie come in and light it up. And I was expecting all-world performances from Tavon Austin last year. I was drooling over the prospects of Tavon Austin getting his hands on the football last year. But Tavon Austin told me something that I think we didn't really realize, but we saw it, but we really didn't want to believe it last year. And he said, man, last year the playbook looked like Spanish to me. It looked like a different language. And you could tell because the Rams didn't know how to use him. They couldn't get him on the field. And he wasn't as productive as you thought he was going to be in his rookie season, at least as productive as I thought he was going to be. I can't speak for you. I thought this guy was going to be lights out. So to see him struggle in his rookie season was a cause for concern. But the kid didn't understand what they were asking him to do. He didn't understand the playbook. He says, I'm in a much better place this year. I know what they're asking of me. I understand the playbook. I know the plays. I'm just a totally different player this year because I can go out and play and not have to think. Makes a huge difference if you are a football player. So looking at this team, the lack of explosiveness or the grounded air was a problem last year because it's hard in this league to score on a 13-play, 87-yard drive often. You know, and you of all teams should understand that because you are among the league leaders in penalties offensively. So of all teams, you would understand that it's hard to put together a 14-play, 90-yard drive because something bad is going to happen on that drive at some point, most likely. You're going to incur a holding penalty. You're going to have a false start penalty. You're going to have illegal motion. You're going to have offensive pass interference, some kind of step backwards. On 3rd and 7, when you pick up 9 yards, you're going to have a holding penalty that makes it 3rd and 17. You're not picking that up most likely now. So you got to punt. And so explosive plays minimizes the amount of opportunities you have to have a penalty, to derail a drive. And also explosive plays help you get to the end zone faster, help you get in field goal range faster. And you were dead last in the league in plus 40-yard plays, those corrosive and explosive plays over 40 yards. You only had 5 of those last year. And that was dead last in this league. And with a guy like Chris Givens on the roster and Tavon Austin, you would expect that this team could be a little bit more explosive than that. But they weren't. And some of it can be charged to you not having Sam Bradford in the lineup. Some of it can be charged to guys just not knowing the playbook like a Stedman Bailey or a Tavon Austin. Some of it can just be charged to you just not being an explosive football team. Simple as that. Whatever the case may be, you've got to be better. You were second to last in the league in explosive plays, period. And those are plays over 20 yards. If not for the Redskins and them being anemic at getting explosive plays last year in the passing game, you would have been dead last. So you've got to tighten up and get more explosive plays as an offense. And I expect you to do that this year with Tavon Austin. Maybe even Kenny Britt can step up. We'll talk about him. Brian Quick, we'll talk about him. Well, we'll talk about the need for you to be better at the receiver position and at quarterback a little bit later. But just know that's something that you've got to be better at moving forward. And you look at another weakness of this football team. And as much as I talk about this team being young and the youthfulness as a strength, it's still a weakness because you still got guys that just don't know how. I talked about Tavon Austin last year, having the playbook look like a foreign language to him. What do you think these new crop of rookies are coming in and saying to themselves? Like, man, this is tough. The good thing about the rookies that you got this year versus the rookies you got last year is that they're not skill players. A lot of these guys are offensive linemen, defensive linemen, cornerbacks. These are guys that can step in right away because there's not so many ways you can tell a guy to play cover 2, or cover 3, or it's a zone blitz. As a cornerback, your responsibilities are limited as to what you have to do. You're either in man, you're in zone, or you're going after the quarterback. It's really simple. So it's much easier for a cornerback to come in and know what he's supposed to do. It's all about adjusting to the speed of the game. Instead of you playing against elite players once every month like you did in college, now you're playing against elite players every week that have the utmost athleticism week in, week out, and you've just got to learn to adjust to the speed of the game. Some of the rules have changed. A guy isn't down if he hits the ground without being touched. He can get up and run, so you just got to adjust to the speed of the game, the rules of the game, and you'll be fine. Last year, you drafted skill guys like Stedman Bailey, like Tavon Austin, like Zach Stacy. They have to come in, learn a system, learn a scheme, and figure out what they're supposed to be doing, what their responsibility is on plays. And so things change. When you get a guy that has to just come in like an Aaron Donald and just do your job, it's so much easier. That transition from college to the pros is so much easier. So with that being said, though, still a lot of young football players on this team. And when you're a young football team, you're still learning how to win. There's not enough veterans on this team to show you the way. When I hear this, and this makes me cringe, when I hear that Kenny Britt is a vocal and veteran leader on your football team, I'm nervous. I'm a little nervous and disturbed by that because that tells me two things. A, you don't have any veteran leadership whatsoever. When guys are looking up to Kenny Britt needs a role model. And you're telling me that you've got young guys looking up to him? That's a problem. So that's one thing that it tells me. Another thing that it tells me is that you don't have any leadership in that locker room and guys that know how to win. Because when you're looking to a loser like Kenny Britt, and I'm not calling him a loser as a person, Kenny Britt has never won anything. He didn't come from a winning team with a winning pedigree. You don't have winners in that locker room. So it's a bunch of guys looking around at each other that don't know how to win. And you can talk about collegiate success all you like. Collegiate success is exactly that. Winning in college. This is the pros. None of that stuff matters anymore. Because at this point now, you're all trying to do one thing, and that's win in this league. And if nobody in the locker room has that type of experience, the only way you can get it is by winning together. And that's something that this Rams team hasn't done enough of. And so that youthfulness is a strength. It's also a weakness. It's a gift and it's a curse. So those are your weaknesses for the St. Louis Rams. We go from there to camp battles. As you can see, I'm here talking about camp battles with the St. Louis Rams with the assistance of my big board, and I'll be using my big board to break down these camp battles and into the experiment. And as you can see, this board is full on this side with the camp battles, and it should be. This team is young, they're hungry, and there are a lot of young guys competing for playing time on this very talent-rich roster. So you start at the quarterback position. Not starter. Don't be alarmed. We're talking about backup quarterback. And I'm not going to talk about this one very long because I look at this backup quarterback position and I don't know if the Rams are carrying 3 quarterbacks. I think it would be in their best interest to because of the history of Sam Bradford. You need 3 quarterbacks on your roster. So the question becomes not necessarily who's the backup, because I think we can basically pencil in Shaun Hill as your backup on this football team. I think it's pretty safe to make the assumption that he'll come in and he'll be your new Clemens from a season ago. So I don't think that the Rams fans need to worry about the backup. You got a veteran. You brought him in here as a veteran backup, much like you had Kellen Clemens, to just be a stabilizing force at the backup quarterback position. I think where the real competition is if you're keeping 3 quarterbacks, because Garrett Gilbert has been getting a lot of reps in practice, but I think it's to catch him up, to get him up to speed, because you want him to make this roster. But the real question is, if you keep 3, Austin Davis versus Garrett Gilbert, I think the Rams want to keep Garrett Gilbert. That's why they drafted him. They haven't been impressed with Austin Davis, and I think that's why they drafted Garrett Gilbert, to come in and try to seize that 3rd quarterback position and maybe groom him for the future to be the backup quarterback. But for the time being, I think that distinction goes to Shaun Hill. If you keep 3 quarterbacks, watch out for Garrett Gilbert and Austin Davis battling it out for that 3rd and final quarterback spot. You look at backup running back. This is very interesting because I think the assumption by Rams fans, and maybe even to a degree myself, was that once you drafted Trey Mason, it was a 2-headed monster. Zach Stacy, Trey Mason, a little bit of thunder and lightning. He was going to be a little quicker option. He didn't blow us away at the combine with his 40 times, but I think he plays a little bit faster and quicker than his times at the 40 may have led on. And so we were thinking Trey Mason was going to come in here and automatically be the backup running back to Zach Stacy. But again, this is what I talked about with these rookies. You can't assume with rookies that they're just going to get it. Here's a skill guy, and I talked about skill position guys. It's harder to pick it up. And one thing that Trey Mason doesn't do well is block, okay? That's one thing that's not in his repertoire. And that's one of the things that keeps young running backs off the field early on in their careers, is their inability to pass protect on 3rd down. And he can't do it right now. He's learning how to do that, but he's not very good at it. So I'm not surprised when I hear Benny Cunningham is getting all the backup reps with the first team, and basically the majority of all the second team reps are being split up between him and Isaiah Peed. And we thought Isaiah Peed was basically done on this roster. And to hear him getting a lot of the looks at the second team doesn't surprise me. And that Trey Mason is just slowly coming along and he's not getting a lot of reps doesn't surprise me one bit. I think it's pretty safe to say that Benny Cunningham is going to be your backup running back. He's going to be the guy that sees the football when Zach Stacy is out of the game getting a blow and trying to recharge that battery. I think Benny Cunningham is the guy. He's shown the ability to catch the football out of the backfield. He's shown the ability to run it. And I think he's shown that he can block, if need be, on 3rd downs. And so Trey Mason, you might not see a lot of him in his rookie season. Not as much as you think. And so right now, backup running back looks like it's Benny Cunningham's job to lose. Either injury or lack of production moving on will be his downfall. But I don't see Benny Cunningham relenting and giving that position up to Trey Mason. Trey Mason is going to have to earn his carries and his time on this football team in his rookie season. Benny Cunningham looks like he's going to be your backup running back. You move on to center. And I talked about center. Scott Wells is the guy that you paid money to a couple of seasons ago to come in and solidify the center position. Well, he's been banged up. Over the last 2 years, he's had injuries, and he had a big one last year, week 13. He fractures his fibula, so he's going to be out for an extended period of time. He missed the rest of last season, and he's still nursing that injury. And he's an older guy. When you get up there in age, you're 33 years old, injuries don't heal as fast. So the question now becomes is, at some point, you're going to have to replace Scott Wells. Do you have the guy on the roster right now to do that? And that's what this competition is all about. When Scott Wells is healthy and he's ready to go, he'll get his spot back if these guys don't perform. But if these guys come out and show that they have the ability to take over and they can upgrade the center position, then Scott Wells will become a cap casualty next season. So, Tim Barnes versus Barrett Jones at the center position. Barrett Jones is a guy that you drafted out of Alabama, a natural center, but you moved him over to guard for depth, and he can play a little bit of both, guard and center, but he's more naturally suited to be a center. Tim Barnes is a guy that got a look last year. With that Scott Wells injury came an opportunity for someone to get on the field, and that someone was Tim Barnes. He started 4 games last year. He was okay. He wasn't great. He was solid. In his first NFL action, he went out, he performed, put some tape on for the coaches to look at. Now he's going to get an opportunity to start. So if Tim Barnes goes in, shows the coaching staff that, hey, I get it. I understand what you're asking from me in this offense. I can handle the workload. Give me an opportunity. I think it's his job to lose. But Barrett Jones is a guy that you drafted out of Alabama that you want him to take over this spot. So if Barrett Jones can show, hey, I've got the pedigree, I can get it done, I understand the nuances of the center position, and I've adjusted to the speed of the game, and I'm healthy now, maybe he gets the opportunity. One thing's for sure, somebody needs to step up here, because at some point, you're going to need one of these guys to take over at the center position. That's a battle worth watching, because we know that the most critical pressure comes from the middle. And if your center position isn't solidified, Sam Bradford could be on his back looking up a lot in 2014. You move on to outside linebacker. And I talked about this with your front seven, and I said, I think that this front seven can get even better. Here's how. There's a positional battle for outside linebacker, starting strong side linebacker. Jolon Dunbar versus Ray Armstrong. And you already know that it's hard to hold off a guy when his name, and this isn't a nickname, this is a real name. When your real name is Ray, man, is it tough to hold that guy off for long. Ray Armstrong is an athletic freak out of the U. And when you guys got your hands on him, I said, that is such a Rams pick. That is so Rams-like. Because here's a guy with some off-the-field issues that teams were scared off by. The potential for this kid to come in and flash athleticism was uncanny and off the charts. The kid is 6'3". He's about 230, 35 pounds. This kid runs like lightning, hits like a freight train. And I said it's only a matter of time before someone figures out that this kid is legit. And if he can just keep his head screwed on, and you can say that about half of this St. Louis Rams roster. And again, Jeff Fisher is somewhat of a coach whisperer when it comes to kids with a troubled off-the-field background. He gets in their ear and he tells them, hey, you can do one of two things. Either you can make this team or you could not make this team. What do you want to do? Do you want to spend the rest of your life wondering what if? Or are you going to do the right thing and play football? Somehow, some way, he gets through to these kids, and he's one of those guys that I feel like in due time, his talent is going to shine through. And Jolon Dunbar isn't a bad football player, but he wasn't great last year. You can upgrade. Let me upgrade you. Ray Armstrong is a kid that I want you to look out for. Last year, he made some bone-jarring hits on special teams. And he's been doing it throughout camp, I'm hearing. If he can continue to do that and assimilate himself to this Rams defense, I wouldn't be surprised. He may not win the starting job right out of camp. But don't be surprised if week 6 or week 7, Ray Armstrong is your starting strong side linebacker. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. You move on to slot corner. And to me, this really isn't that big of a competition. I just needed to talk about it. All right. You drafted LaMarcus Joyner out of Florida State in the second round as a guy that you wanted to start. And Jeff Fisher said as much. And Brandon McGee was getting most of the looks in minicamp. And so everybody was saying to themselves, hey, is Brandon McGee going to start at slot corner? And what that basically was that LaMarcus Joyner didn't know anything at that time. He was still trying to learn the playbook and get his nose in the playbook and get his feet wet in this league. And so he didn't know what he was doing. So they needed to get good reps out of a player. So they stuck Brandon McGee in there. Not a bad option. And so, is this really a competition? I don't think so. I think it's pretty safe to say that your winner of that competition is right there in LaMarcus Joyner. But what I will say is that he's going to have to work for it, and he's going to have to continue to show. And I think preseason is going to be very telling for this young man because you see the athleticism, and I know they've seen it already in camp, and they've been wowed by his ability to not only blitz and cover, but make things happen and tackle. But the speed of the game changes when live bullets are being fired off. Brandon McGee's been in this league, so he understands what it takes to play in this league. LaMarcus Joyner doesn't. So the preseason will be a huge barometer. If this kid is what we think he can be, he'll prove it right away in the preseason, and there'll be nothing to doubt at the slot corner position. But if he gets in there and this game and the speed of it and the level of competition and the athletes somewhat gobble him up, and he's got to think about what they're asking him to do. What am I supposed to be doing on this play? Am I supposed to be blitzing? Am I supposed to be getting depth? Am I supposed to be dropping into a zone here? Or am I in man-to-man? If he's thinking more than reacting and being proactive, there could be a problem there. I think he's going to lock that position up, but you can never be certain with rookies. That's just something to keep an eye on. I think LaMarcus Joyner is going to be your slot corner day one, but you need him to go out and solidify that in the preseason. So you move on to tight end. And this is a unique situation you've got because you've got a couple of tight ends that are on the fence of making this roster. You've got a situation where it's 5 for 4. All right. Jared Cook Jr., Lance Kendricks, Corey Harkey, Alex Bayer, and Justice Cunningham. 5 tight ends, 4 spots. Jared Cook Jr., Lance Kendricks, and Corey Harkey are all safe on this roster, I feel like. Jared Cook Jr. isn't going anywhere, and Lance Kendricks isn't going anywhere. Corey Harkey, to me, is a guy that last year, when thrusted into action, performed really well. And I think that young kid out of UCLA has solidified his spot, at least for this season, on this team as a tight end. I thought he performed well, did a little bit of everything, and I think he's going to be on this team. So now you go in a situation where it's 2 for 1. Undrafted rookie free agent Alex Bayer versus Justice Cunningham. Justice Cunningham is coming over from the Indianapolis Colts after being a late round draft pick out of South Carolina for them. Didn't pan out in Indianapolis. You snatch him up, and now he's going to battle for a roster spot here. Alex Bayer has been a very impressive undrafted rookie on this football team. Guy with a little bit of size that can catch the football. And I think when it's all said and done, he might be the kid to watch out for in that competition down here, 2 for 1, Justice Cunningham and Alex Bayer. Justice Cunningham is a bigger tight end, a guy that I think is more of a blocking option than a receiving tight end, whereas Alex Bayer brings a little bit more athleticism to the team, and he can still catch the football. And I think he also offers you some help as a special team standout. And I think that, if he makes this roster, will be what makes him make this roster, is his ability to help on special teams. That's interesting to keep an eye on because he can add some depth to the tight end position if he makes this roster. And I'm talking about Alex Bayer. You move on to cornerback. And this is a very interesting position. And I'll get to the best for last in a second. But cornerback is interesting. 6 for 5. And I've got question marks. Because is it 6 for 5? Or is it 6 for 6? Or is it a situation where all 6 guys make it, but then they're going to have to cut somebody. We'll talk about that when we get to the next position. But let's just go off of the assumption right now that it's 6 for 5. 6 players for 5 roster spots at cornerback. Janoris Jenkins, Tremaine Johnson, LaMarcus Joyner, Brandon McGee, E.J. Gaines, and Marcus Robertson. 6 players, 5 roster spots. 3 of these guys, stone cold, ironclad locks. Go ahead and lock it up. Lock it up. Janoris Jenkins, Tremaine Johnson, those are your starters. And LaMarcus Joyner, go ahead and throw him in as a starter in the slot. They're going to be on this roster. The 3 at the bottom, however, are going to have to battle for 2 positions, I think. Or we could be talking about a situation where all 3 of them make the roster temporarily. Brandon McGee, a kid that I talked about was holding down the starting slot corner position in minicamp, is a guy that you drafted out of the University of Miami, the U, and he has a lot of potential, but you're not really sure if he's going to be a guy that long-term fills a need on this roster. With the emergence of LaMarcus Joyner, maybe McGee isn't necessarily needed anymore. I don't know. He has to come in and prove himself in camp because you got a couple of young guys that want to make this roster. E.J. Gaines, a young man you drafted out of Missouri, going to come in and vie for a roster spot. We'll see if E.J. Gaines can come in and do enough to make this roster. And same with Marcus Robinson. Here's an undrafted rookie free agent out of Florida. Had some things stop him from being drafted, but this kid is talented, extremely talented. Didn't run as fast at the combine, didn't do all the things that you expected him to do, and it affected his draft stock. So if he could come in and show some of the talent that he flashed at Florida, this kid could steal a roster spot. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Rams do here because they could keep 2 of those guys. They could keep all 3 of those young men. And here's why this situation is going to be affected greatly. Go to receiver. And this is the wild card. This is the most exciting position to watch. And really, the one that gives you the most question marks going into the 2014 season. Because you go out and you get Kenny Britt. And this is a situation, I think it's a 6 for 5 situation. 6 players, 5 roster spots. And this is one of those question mark positions. Because I don't know. You don't know. We don't know. Brian Quick, Kenny Britt, Tavon Austin, Chris Givens, Austin Pettis, Stedman Bailey. Now, I have Stedman Bailey off to the side by his lonesome. Here's the situation and the dynamic that makes this position a little bit unique. All 5 of the guys that I named over here, Brian Quick, Kenny Britt, Tavon Austin, Chris Givens, Austin Pettis, they're all making this roster. Every single one of them. The reason why every single one of them are making this roster is because Stedman Bailey has been suspended for the first 4 games of the season. So he's not going to count against this roster initially because he won't be counted against the 53-man set. So the problem then becomes, what happens when Stedman Bailey comes back off of that suspension? He's making his team. So the question then becomes, do you keep 6 receivers and cut loose one of these cornerbacks? Because the assumption is you keep these 5 receivers going into the season and you keep 6 corners as well, right? Do you keep all 6 of those corners when Stedman Bailey comes back and get rid of one of these receivers? Or do you keep all 6 of these receivers and get rid of one of these cornerbacks when Stedman Bailey comes back? That is the big question mark. We will see. That is an interesting dynamic there because at receiver, you got some clones here. Brian Quick, Kenny Britt, and Austin Pettis, they're all the same guy. They're all 6'4" or better. They're all guys that have some speed, but none of them are electric and blazers with that speed. They all can go up and high point the football. They all have a level of toughness. Maybe Austin Pettis and Kenny Britt are a little tougher than Brian Quick. I don't know if he's filled out that frame. I remember when he was drafted, he was a skinny twig of a kid. So if he's put on a little bit of weight, he could be a guy that is a little bit tougher now. But You got some clones there. Maybe you can cut Austin Pettis. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Or maybe one of these corners down here is relegated to the practice squad, like a Marcus Robinson or EJ Gaines. We'll see. That's going to be a TD, a tough decision when Stedman Bailey comes off of that suspension. So you go from there to the experiment. And I've dubbed this experiment Rumble, Young Rams Rumble. So you go on to the experiment for the St. Louis Rams Rumble, Young Rams Rumble. And you start with the research question. Can this young Rams football team, who has been knocking on the door of 500 the last 2 seasons, keep Sam Bradford healthy and make a power move in the NFC West? Sam Bradford has to stay healthy. This team is talented. Can they take the next step? You've been knocking on the door of 500 for the last 2 seasons. 7-8-1 in 2012 and 7-9 in 2013. You got to take that next step. And if you're going to take the next step, the guy that's going to take you there is Sam Bradford. He's got to stay healthy, and this defense has to kick it up to another gear in order for you to get over that hump in this tough NFC West division. You move on to the hypothesis. If this Rams defensive front is as dominant as we are led to believe, and Sam Bradford is healthy and productive, then the St. Louis Rams can get over the hump in the NFC West. Look, this division, as we know, is the toughest in all of football. And if you're going to take that next step, Sam Bradford was well on his way to having an extremely productive season last year before the injury. 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, passer rating of up over 90. The kid was playing good football. He was starting to get it. The light bulb was coming on. He's just got to stay healthy. This defense, again, you play in a very defensive-minded division. You've got to kick it up a notch if you're the Rams. If you can do all of those things, why not you in that NFC West division? You move on to materials needed. Stand up Sam. That's the first one that's needed. No doubt about it. Sam, they need you to be upright. Offensive line has to take care of business. You have to take care of yourself. Get rid of the football. Make smart decisions. Go through your progressions. Get rid of the football. Don't keep it in your hand too long. Do not take unnecessary shots. Last year, you got injured scrambling to the sidelines. You've got to take care of yourself. This team needs you if they're going to succeed. Sam has to stand up. Look, you didn't get a contract extension for a reason. They didn't extend you. This is your last year of your deal. You're going into your last season of your deal without a new contract. You know why? Because the Rams don't know who you are. And when they don't know who you are, they don't break you off with that bread. So if you want to see that green, then you're going to have to lead this team to a above 500 record. And you got to stay healthy for all 16 games and perform at a high level while doing so. You look at the next material needed. Hunting season. It's hunting season for this Rams front seven, primarily that front four. I need every single one of those front four defenders to be dominant. Chris Long and Robert Quinn on the edges, and in the middle, Aaron Donald. Never trust a man with 2 first names. And right next to him, Michael Brockers. I need them to take off and be dominant. I need them to go hunting after the quarterback. It's hunting season. Pull out your rifles and go and get the quarterback. It's hunting season, and you guys got to be dominant up front. If this Rams team is going to win inside the division, because that's something you don't do enough of. You don't win inside your division enough. If you're going to start winning, you got to harass these quarterbacks in this division. A lot of them are athletic. They can move around. You got to go get them. Go and hunt if you are the St. Louis Rams up front on that defense. Rams receivers make me a believer. I'm not sold on this group. When you tell me Kenny Britt is the most experienced guy on your front line as a receiver, and you got guys looking up to him, I'm worried. And I'm hearing that Brian Quick and Kenny Britt are running with the ones, which is a big surprise to me because I forgot all about Brian Quick. He was an afterthought. And then to see Kenny Britt come in, we've never doubted his ability, his potential in this league. That's never been in question. It's always been the mental aspect for Kenny Britt. Does he get it up here? Can he stay healthy? Those two things in conjunction with each other have been his undoing in this league, his downfall. Never for 1 second have we questioned the talent. 3 years ago, this kid was on the precipice of becoming one of the best receivers. His first 2 games of the season, lights out. He looked like he was going to be the best receiver in the league that year. Got injured, tore his ACL up. If he can keep the transgressions off the field to a minimum and stay healthy, the man can play football. And the coach that drafted him in Tennessee is trying to do the same thing with him in St. Louis. But this group as a whole has to step up. Tavon Austin, you didn't get much out of him last year. I need him to step up. Stedman Bailey, he already has been suspended for 4 games. I need him to straighten up and fly right. Chris Givens, at one point, he looked like a deep threat that was going to take the top off the defense consistently. Haven't seen this kid since. So, Ram receivers, make me a believer. I want to believe. Make me a believer. Stone Cold T. Austin. Stone Cold T. Austin. Need you to step up and get Tavon Austin the football. I need this kid to be a jack of all trades. I'm hearing it. You're handing him the football out of the backfield now, a la Percy Harvin. That's what I want to hear. Get this kid the football. Okay? So what? He isn't the receiver that you thought he was? Or maybe he is, and he just didn't know what he was doing. Whatever the case may be, bubble screens, slants, hitches, tosses, jet sweeps, 9 routes. This kid got to get the football. Figure it out. Figure out how to get him the football in space. Special teams. I need Tavon Austin to take it to another level on special teams. Punts, kickoffs, whatever. Whatever they got him on, I need him to step up. I need him to be all world. Look, these guys traded up in the draft for you to come up and get you. I need you to be a dominant football player. I need you to be Stone Cold T. Austin. Battering Rams. Look, this year, unlike any other year, with all the hoopla, all of the people feeling like the Rams can do something big this year, all of the expectations, you got to step up. You got to be battering Rams. You got to be a tougher football team. This division is built on toughness, the ability to smack somebody in the mouth. Sometimes you got to go in somebody's house and disrespect them. I mean, just absolutely kick in the door, waving the 4-4, and they got to be screaming, St. Louis, don't hit me no more. You got to start being disrespectful to Arizona. You got to go to their house and just disrespect them. Don't wipe your feet at the door. Don't ask, can you have a beverage? You smack them in the face. You don't wipe your feet off. You go to the kitchen. You go raid the pantry. You go in the fridge. You get you a cold, refreshing beverage. Pop the top. Go in the living room. Snatch the remote. Put your dirty feet up on the coffee table and get comfortable. You got to start winning on the road in the division, man. You gotta start putting fear into the teams in your division and winning. That's the only way you're going to get respect. Respect is not given, it is earned. You know that. And so you got to be battering Rams. You got to be tough. Run the football. Smack teams around. Sam Bradford has to be better. Defensively, you got to get after teams. Make them afraid of you. You want to take that next step, it's going to take you going to the next level if you are the St. Louis Rams. You got to be battering Rams. So that takes us to our independent variable. Sam Bradford in the front 7. It's no secret Sam Bradford has to stay healthy. I can talk to you until your face turns blue, until my face turns blue about Sam Bradford and how this team needs him to go to that next level. I don't need to keep harping on the fact that he needs to stay healthy and continue to play like he was a season ago. If we extrapolate what he was doing over the first 6 games, over the entire season, that kid was going to throw for over 30 touchdowns and about 12 interceptions. If he can do that, you got a football player on your hands. You've got a winning season on your hands. So Sam Bradford is an independent variable, and so is that front 7. They got to go after the quarterback. They got to generate turnovers like they did last season. They got to get to the quarterback and make it tough on opposing teams to score points. Look, points are what win football games in this league. I don't have to tell you that. That's stating the obvious, okay? If you can limit teams to scoring points, you're going to give yourself a better chance to win. And I need the Rams to score more points, and that leads us to our dependent variable, the rushing attack, and turnovers. If Sam Bradford remains healthy, then the rushing game is going to get off the ground. Because last year, teams felt comfortable putting 8 in the box because they didn't respect Kellen Clemens and his ability to drive the football down the field. That's why you were one of the worst teams in explosive plays. Nobody respected you. They came up, they crowded the box. That's why Zach Stacy and his rushing attack had under 4 yards per carry. That's terrible. That's abysmal. But when teams can load up the box with 8 defenders, that's what happens. If Sam Bradford is keeping teams honest, driving the ball down the field, then the rushing attack is going to be opened up and lanes are going to be formed, and you can run the football better. In that front seven, if you score points with Sam Bradford in that offense, you score points. Now you got these guys that can pin their ears back. I talked about hunting season. They can go hunting. And if they can hunt and get after the quarterback, then guess what happens? Turnovers happen. And then you get shorter fields, and then that Rams offense can get back on the field and score points. See how this cycle repeats itself? You score points, defense is ahead, they can go after the quarterback, they force turnovers, offense get the football back, they score more points. It's a winning formula. It works time and time again in this league. So you go from the dependent variable to the constant. Non-500 football. This Rams team hasn't been able to get over 500 since, look, get this, they haven't been over 500 since 2003. We're talking greatest show on turf, Rams. You haven't been 500, just 8-8 since 2006. So it's been a long time since you've been at or above 500. It's time for you to break the cycle. You've got to get over that hump. And if you're going to do it, all of the things that I've talked about have to be accomplished in 2014. It's time for you to break that cycle. That's a lot of football. A lot of your fans hoping and wishing for a winning season. Time for you to make that come to fruition. And so we end up at the conclusion. What does this all mean for the St. Louis Rams? Okay? This is a talented football team. And Sam Bradford has to perform. This defense has to be lights out. You play in a tough division. And you know what? I'm going to tell you right now where your season is going to be defined. It's weeks 6 through 12. All right? In that stretch of football, it's murderer's row. And you got the 49ers twice. You got Seattle once. You've got a slew of good football teams. I think you got Kansas City in there. And I don't know how good they're going to be. It doesn't matter. It's tough football. And you got 3 consecutive road games. I believe you got the Denver Broncos in that stretch and San Diego. It's tough sledding in that stretch, week 6 through 12. I want you as a Rams fan to look at week 6 through 12 and tell me if you can come out of that stretch alive. Because if you can, I got you. Listen to this. I got you starting the season off at 6-2, 5-2, 6-2, something like that. I think it's 5-2. And then I got you losing about 3 or 4 games straight. And it's that stretch of football that is going to wreck your season. If you can somehow manage to come out of that stretch of football, week 6 through 12, smiling. If you can come out of that stretch of football looking like this instead of this, then you're going to have a good season. And you're going to win 10 games. But if you come out of that stretch of football like that, and that's how I think you're going to come out of that stretch of football, because you got 3 straight on the road against some good football teams, then you're 8-8. That's what I got you going. 8-8. On the bright side, that's 500. You haven't been able to do that. But if you're a Rams fan, you don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear 8-8. Because 8-8 isn't good enough to make the postseason. So 8-8 is where I have you. We'll see if you're able to do anything more than that. That stretch of football is going to be telling. So that's it for the St. Louis Rams. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the lab room. Come back and join me tomorrow, 7 o'clock sharp, as we go to the next team up on the docket, the Miami Dolphins. See you then. Have a good one. Like the content? Want more? Sub up.